Well now, howdy there, y'all watching from? Reckon it's a late evening hush where you're sitting, or maybe early morning with the sun just peeping over the hills. Lordy, I do love hearing where folks come from, so don't be shy, holler out if you're snug in a little cabin or sprawled out on some porch swing. Now gather round, young'uns, and hush up now. I got a tale to spin, and it's one that'll carry y'all across rivers and ridges, through whispering groves and wide O.L. meadows. It's about a man folks called Johnny Appleseed, though his real name was John Chapman, and by golly, he had a way with the land that's harder to reckon than a fox in a henhouse dot now. Johnny weren't your usual feller. Sure as shootin', he wandered alone more than most of us wander in our dreams. Y'all might be wondering why a man'd pack up and travel so far, planting apple trees wherever his feet carried him. Well, he had a heart bigger than a barn door, and a mind set on sharing the gift of fruit with any soul who'd take a bite. Kids, you best believe he didn't fuss over fences or worry about the law much. He'd just tip his hat, smile that crooked grin, and say, "Don't you worry now, there's enough apples for all." I remember sittin' by the fire as a young un, hearing my pappy tell how Johnny'd wander barefoot or in some ragged boots, with a pot for a hat sometimes, and sacks of seeds slung over his shoulder. Lordy, my pappy'd say, he'd show up like a breeze coming off the hills, quiet as a whisper, and before you knew it, apple trees'd be sprouting up all over, and them young'uns listening close. Oh, they'd gape wide, eyes round as saucers, wondering how a man could be that kindly and that mysterious all at once. One evening, I reckon Johnny walked up a dusty path to a little settlement, and I swear the children ran round him like bees to a blossom. "Mr. Chapman," one brave lad piped up, "why do you carry them seeds everywhere?" Johnny knelt, scratched his chin, and whispered, "Well now, young un, I reckon every patch o' dirt deserves a chance to be sweet. Ain't no better feelin' than plantin' something that'll feed folks long after I'm gone." He smiled then, and by golly, the sun caught his eyes just so, like it knew he meant every word. The settlers, bless their hearts, watched him too, curious and a mite suspicious at first. Folks don't just wander round plantin' apple trees without reason, not back then. But Johnny had a way soft-spoken, patient, gentle, that eased folks' minds faster than a summer rain soaking dry soil. He'd tip his hat to the women, nod to the men, and often there were young uns hanging about. He'd kneel low and hand over a seed or two, saying, "Plant this and see what dreams grow." And shucks, them kids would plant it right then and there, dirt squished between their fingers, grinning like they'd discovered gold dot by the time he moved on. Ridden naught but a sturdy pair o' legs and a few wild thoughts. There'd be a stretch of green sproutin' in his wake. Trees that'd one day bear fruit for the weary traveler, the settler, the child with sticky fingers. And Johnny? Well, he'd just tip his hat and keep wandering, never settlin' too long, never lingerin' to boast. "The world's big," he'd whisper to himself, "and it could sure use a bit more sweetness." Asterisk, well now, don't you wander off just yet, young uns. Pull your chairs closer and keep them eyes wide, 'cause the tale's just picking up like a creek after a spring rain. Y'all reckon what it's like to wander through thick woods and open fields, with nothing but the sky overhead and a sack o' seeds on your back. That's how Johnny traveled, by golly, with a heart full o' hope and pockets full o' possibilities. One morning, he stumbled upon a valley tucked deep between ridges, the kind that makes a feller want to stop breathin' just to soak it all in. Sunlight spilled like honey across the hills, and the wildflowers nodded like they knew a secret. Johnny knelt by a patch o' bare earth, dug his fingers in, and whispered, "Well now, reckon you'll do just fine here." He scattered his seeds careful as a preacher read in scripture, and the children of a nearby homestead peeked through the brush, shuffling closer, curiosity sparking in their eyes. Mr. Chapman, a freckled little gal, piped up, "Do them seeds really grow into trees?" Johnny chuckled, a sound like the soft rattle of dry leaves in autumn. "Sure as shootin', darlin'. They'll grow tall and strong, bearing apples sweeter than a Sunday pie. But you gotta give 'em time, patience, and a bit o' care, just like folks need sometimes." The girl's eyes went as wide as the moon, and she nodded slow, like she understood something mighty important without even knowing the words. As he moved on through the valley, Johnny met settlers with all sorts of questions and worries. One old man, lean and weathered, scratched his beard and asked, "Son, why waste your days wandering and planting? Ain't there easier ways to live?" Johnny tipped his pot hat, eyes twinkling, and said, "Easier ways don't make sweeter lives, sir. A tree planted today feeds tomorrow. A kind act done now feeds hearts for years to come. By golly." The man shook his head slow, unsure if he understood, but he couldn't help smiling at the truth in them words. The children, though, they followed Johnny like shadows, asking questions that made him laugh soft and low. "Do the trees ever get lonely?" asked one spry boy with hair sticking every which way. Johnny knelt eye to eye with him and whispered, "Reckon they do sometimes, young un. But you plant enough trees, and they keep each other company, just like folks oughta. And wouldn't y'all know it, that boy went home that evening thinking of trees like friends, each sapling a companion he could visit in years to come. By the time the sun began setting, Johnny was wandering again, leaving behind a patchwork of freshly planted seeds. The valley was quiet now, save for the soft murmur of settlers and the rustle o' young nuns running to and fro. He'd pause on a ridge, look back, and whisper to himself, "Sure as shootin', the world's a better place with a few more apples in it." And with that, he vanished down the path, barefoot or in ragged boots, carrying nothing but hope and a bag of seeds, wandering toward the next valley, the next homestead, the next heart that could use a little sweetness. Now, y'all settle in a spell, 'cause this here story's got more wandering to do, more hills to cross, and more hearts to touch. Johnny, he weren't one to linger long in any one place, but he had a way o' mackin' folks feel like he'd been there all their lives. Children run out to meet him, laughing and jabberin', while he stooped to hand each of them a seed or two. "Plant it good," he'd whisper, eyes crinkling with mischief and care both, "and don't forget to talk to it. Trees like being heard, don't you know?" I recall a tale my uncle used to tell about a stretch of open prairie Johnny came across one fine spring morning. The grass waved taller than a boy's head, and wildflowers painted the ground with reds, yellows, and purples. A cluster of young'uns peeked out from behind a fence, shy-like. "Mr. Chapman," one little feller asked, voice trembling just a touch, "you plantin' all these trees for us?" Johnny chuckled, kneeling low to their level. "Well now, reckon I'm plantin' them for everyone, young'uns. Folks comin' after us, folks who ain't even born yet. Trees got a way of keeping stories alive, seeing. The children blinked, then nodded, like they felt the truth in his words deep down in their bones. Now, Johnny had a habit, y'all see, of talking to every settler he met. Some folks were suspicious, some outright curious, and some just plain tired. But he'd tip his pot hat, scratch his chin, and say, "Don't you fret none. I'm just wandering, planting, and sharing a bit o' sweetness." By golly, that gentleness, that plain-spoken kindness, it had a way of sneaking past folks' doubts. Even old Mr. Thompson, the grumpiest man in the county, had to smile when he watched Johnny hand a seed to his youngest daughter, whispering, "One day these'll be mighty fine apples." One evening, as the sky painted itself in oranges and purples, Johnny set up camp near a babbling brook. Children gathered round, their eyes reflecting the flicker of a small fire, and asked questions quicker than a rooster crows at dawn. "Do you ever get tired?" One whispered, voice soft with awe. Johnny leaned back, tilting his head to the stars, and replied, "Sure as shootin', I get tired. But don't you see, young'uns, there ain't nothin' quite like plantin' hope where it ain't been planted before. Makes tired legs feel lighter, makes the heart beat a mite faster." The children giggled, nodded, and even the settlers nearby leaned closer, listening, like every word was a bit o' magic dot by the time the moon climbed high and the night critters began their quiet wandering. Johnny had laid down another row of seeds. He watched them a moment, whispering to himself, "Sure as shootin', these seeds'll carry stories farther than I ever could on foot." Then he packed his bag, swung it over his shoulder, and with a last nod to the valley and its new green companions, he walked on, barefoot or booted, through the night, guided by stars and a heart set on wandering farther yet. "All right now, y'all hush a bit and lean closer." Johnny, he kept wandering, ever so steady, through valleys, hollers, and ridges that seemed to stretch on forever. He had that way about him, quiet as a shadow, soft-spoken like the wind through pines, yet every footstep left a mark folks could feel in their hearts. Children from settlements and cabins would peek through windows or follow him just a bit, too timid to speak, yet drawn to that gentle glow he carried. One day he came upon a wide meadow, the kind that rolls like the back of some great green beast, dotted with wildflowers and patches o' clover. Johnny knelt in the earth, his fingers digging holes for seeds, and a couple of young'uns approached, tugging at his sleeve. "Mr. Chapman," one little gal asked, "how do you know where to plant 'em?" Johnny chuckled low, eyes glinting with a secret. "Well now, darlin', I reckon I follow my heart more than my eyes. Land speaks if you listen. It tells you where it wants a tree, where it'll grow tall and strong." By golly, them kids' eyes lit up like fireflies in the twilight. They'd never heard anyone talk like that 'fore. "And, Johnny?" He smiled, leaning close to them. "See, every seed's got a tale in it. Plant it right, and it'll tell a story for years to come. Don't you forget that, now." The children nodded solemn-like, then ran off to scatter clover seeds of their own, laughing and shrieking in delight, making the meadow hum with life. Now, settlers passing by would stop too, some with suspicion, some with curiosity, and some with the plain hope that a man like Johnny might bring a bit o' good luck their way. "Son," a weary farmer asked one morning, squinting in the sun, "why wander so far? Plantin' what don't feed no one yet?" Johnny tipped his pot hat, scratched his chin, and whispered, "Sure as shootin', Patience is the trick. Trees take time, and so do folks. What's planted today feeds tomorrow, and that's a truth as steady as the river. By golly, the man shook his head slow, maybe not fully understanding, but feeling the warmth in those words just the same. Evening fell soft, and Johnny set his camp near a cluster of oak trees, the young uns still chattering about apples and dreams. "Do you get lonesome?" one timid boy asked, his voice a tremble in the dusk. Johnny squatted low, meeting the boy's gaze. "Sure as shootin', sometimes I do. But don't you see, little feller, I carry friends in my heart, and trees can be friends too. Plant enough of them, and you never walk alone." The boy's eyes went wide, and the corners of his mouth lifted slow, like a smile that knew the truth of something bigger than words. By nightfall, Johnny had wandered on, leaving behind a trail of hope and young sprouts. He'd paused on a rise, gazing at the valleys below, whispering soft to the stars, "Sure as shootin', the world's gettin' sweeter one tree at a time." And with that, he disappeared into the gentle darkness, barefoot or booted, carrying nothing but seeds, and the steady rhythm of wandering feet, and a wandering heart. Asterisk now. Y'all keep your ears open, 'cause Johnny's wandering ain't near done yet. He'd travel through forests thick with pine and maple, where sunlight danced in patches and the wind carried the smell of earth and promise. Children from distant cabins and homesteads would spot him first, a lone figure with a sack of seeds and a crooked grin, barefoot or in some ragged boots, and they'd follow at a distance, whispering and giggling, not wanting to scare him off. One morning, he crossed a shallow creek, the water tickling his toes, and found a patch o' soil perfect for planting. A couple young'uns were already there, eyes wide, watching his every move. "Mr. Chapman," one brave lad piped up, "do them trees ever forget us?" Johnny laughed soft, a sound like rustling leaves, and knelt to plant a seed. "No, young'un, sure as shootin' they don't. Every tree remembers the hand that planted it, the words spoken, the care given. They hold stories like old friends." The boy nodded, and by golly, I reckon he felt it deep down, like he'd found something mighty special in that quiet moment. As Johnny wandered further, settlers would greet him with a mixture of awe and curiosity. "Son," an old woman called from her porch, "why do you plant all these trees when the land's already full?" Johnny tipped his pot hat, eyes crinkling with warmth, and replied, "Land's never too full, Mom. Trees make it richer, kinder, and sweeter. Folks'll thank 'em one day, long after I'm gone." By golly, that old woman nodded slow, a tear glinting in her eye, maybe not fully understanding him, but knowing he meant every word. Now, the children he met along the way, they'd pepper him with questions, some silly, some serious. "Do apples grow in winter?" asked a freckled girl, tugging at his sleeve. Johnny chuckled, kneeling low to her level. "Well now, darlin', apples sleep in winter, restin' up for the sun. Come spring, they'll wake and stretch toward the sky, just like folks after a long nap." The children laughed and gasped, imagining trees stretching their limbs like sleepy giants, and Johnny's eyes twinkled at the joy in their faces. Evening came soft, and Johnny laid down near a grove he'd planted weeks before. He watched the saplings sway in the breeze, whispering to himself, "Sure as shootin', these little fellows shall grow strong, bearing fruit and stories for years." He packed his few belongings, swung his sack over his shoulder, and set off again. moving quiet as a shadow, leaving behind a path stitched with hope, laughter, and the gentle promise of sweetness yet to come. Asterisk now, y'all hush a spell and listen close, 'cause Johnny's wandering takes him to more hills and hollers, each one painting a story of patience, kindness, and a touch of wonder. He wandered barefoot or in some worn boots, the sun warm on his back, the wind tugging gently at his hat or what some folks called a pot, though Johnny wore it like a crown of sorts. Children and settlers alike would spot him coming from a mile off, and by golly, they'd tiptoe closer, curious as a fox, wondering what sort of magic he carried with him this time. One fine morning, he came across a stretch of land that had seen little love from hands or hearts. Dirt dry and stubborn, rocks peeking here and there, and a handful of wildflowers struggling through cracks. Johnny knelt down, dug his fingers into the earth, and whispered, "Sure as shootin', this patch deserves a bit o' sweetness." A young lad peeked from behind a fence post, eyes full of wonder, and asked, "Mr. Chapman, do you ever get lost?" Johnny chuckled, tilting his head, eyes soft with humor. "Now, son, I reckon the day I get truly lost is the day I stop listening to the land. It guides me if I'm quiet enough to hear." The boy's jaw dropped, and he nodded slow, as if the words had settled deep in his bones. As he wandered, Johnny met folks of all sorts, grizzled men who'd seen winters too long, women with hands calloused from work, and children with eyes bright as morning dew. Each encounter was gentle, never hurried. "Why do you keep planting these trees?" an old man asked one evening, leaning on a fence post. Johnny tipped his pot hat, a crooked grin spreading wide. "Sure as shootin', trees carry hope, memories, and a bit o' kindness for those who come after. Plantin' 'em is just the start. Folks will carry the rest in their hearts." The man scratched his beard, nodded slow, and by golly, a small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. Children were always the most curious, and Johnny loved that. "Do apples dream?" one little gal asked, eyes round. Johnny leaned close, whispering, "Reckon they do, darlin'. Dream of sun, rain, and folks enjoying their sweetness. You plant 'em right, talk to 'em a bit, and their dreams come true." The children laughed, imagining tiny apple dreams floating up toward the sky, and Johnny's heart warmed like a hearth on a winter's night. As night fell soft, Johnny walked through the valleys and meadows, leaving behind trails of young trees, each one a promise of hope, stories, and sweetness yet to come. He paused atop a ridge, gazing at the darkened land below, and whispered to the stars, "Sure as shootin', the world's a better place with a few more apples in it." And with that, barefoot or booted, he wandered on, a quiet traveler with a bag of seeds, a heart full of care, and a legacy of kindness that had grown taller than any tree he'd ever planted.